My wife served me divorce papers on my birthday in front of her family. Now she's begging for a second chance from her car parked outside my house. Her father found it hilarious. He laughed while she announced she was leaving me for someone she considered less of a letdown. I heard one of them say they never actually believed she would go through with marrying someone as beneath her as me. They had champagne on hand, ready to toast what they probably thought would be my complete breakdown. Instead, I kept calm, signed the documents without a fuss, and walked out. Now, 6 months later to the day, she is parked outside my house, curled up in her car, pleading for a conversation and flooding my phone with desperate messages. Honestly, if someone had told me this was going to be my life, I would have laughed in their face. Yet, here I am. I turned 35 last Saturday. It was not a milestone year or anything, but my wife, well, soon-to-be ex-wife Sabrina, had said she was planning something meaningful to mark the day. She seemed almost overly excited about it for the entire week leading up, always glued to her phone, grinning like she had a secret, acting all mysterious. I assumed she was organizing some sort of surprise celebration, maybe something to lift our moods after the rough patch we had been in. Things between us had felt strained. Not the kind of tension that ends in shouting, but the colder, quieter kind that somehow stings more. We had been married for 7 years. We met back in college. She was the stunning business major from a well-off family, and I was the kid scraping by on a scholarship, juggling 3 jobs just to afford basic meals. You know the story. Her family never really accepted me. Her dad, Warren, which truly sounds like something out of an old action movie, never passed up an opportunity to bring up my background, especially during holiday dinners. Her mom would always ask me how that little job of mine was going, even after I earned a promotion to team lead. Then there were the constant Instagram updates. Sabrina loved showing off our place. It was nothing special in her parents' eyes, but it was what we could manage while I was working late and saving for a house. Her posts always came with captions like making the best of it or simple life vibes, as if we were barely scraping by. She constantly compared us to her cousin Tessa, who had landed a hedge fund guy and lived in some ridiculous mansion. Lately, Sabrina had been spending more evenings with her family. She would come home late, say it was work-related, and sometimes I would catch a whiff of cologne that definitely was not mine. She would light up at her phone like someone had just sent her a message that made her day. And that glow? I had not seen it directed at me for a long time. I was not clueless. I had my doubts. Still, I kept telling myself that if I just kept pushing, worked harder, maybe earned that next promotion, things might turn around. That brings us to my birthday. I had to work that day. Not exactly the celebration I had in mind, but that is life sometimes. When I got home, the apartment was empty. Sabrina had texted me, telling me to meet her at her parents' house for my surprise. That already raised a red flag. Her parents' place was the last spot I would ever choose for a celebration, but I figured maybe she was trying to make peace between them and me. So I went, pulled up to their oversized house in the suburbs. When I got there, Sabrina was waiting at the door, wearing a smile that looked forced, one of those smiles that just stops at the mouth. Inside, their living room was full. Her parents were there, along with her sister Chloe, a few cousins, and some familiar faces from past family gatherings. All of them had champagne glasses in hand. The whole room went silent when I stepped inside. Sabrina said she had something special planned for my birthday this year. Her dad let out a small snicker, not a laugh, just one of those smug, under-the-breath chuckles that made my skin crawl. For a second, I thought maybe they were about to give me a gift. A car, maybe. I know, it sounds dumb, but my brain was reaching for anything normal. Then Sabrina pulled out a manila envelope from behind her back. For a split second, I imagined it might be plane tickets or something lighthearted. But no. She looked right at me and dropped the bomb. She was leaving me for someone she considered a better option. The room fell into absolute silence, aside from her father, who suddenly burst out laughing like the whole thing was some kind of twisted joke. I stood there, completely frozen, trying to make sense of what was happening around me. Then her dad spoke up, making sure everyone heard him. He said he could not believe she had actually gone through with marrying someone he thought was beneath her, and thanked the heavens she had finally come to her senses. Sabrina pressed the envelope into my hands. It was a stack of divorce papers, already filled out, just waiting for my signature. Her mother popped open a champagne bottle right then and there, casually pouring glasses like they were celebrating some achievement. They had clearly planned every part of this as one big, cruel celebration at my expense. I have no idea what kind of reaction they were hoping for. Maybe they expected me to break down? Get emotional? Plead with her not to go? But in that moment, something inside me just went cold. I took a look around at their smug, self-satisfied expressions. I looked at the woman I had once believed I would grow old with, and I felt absolutely nothing. It was as if I was outside of my own body, just watching everything play out from a distance. I turned to Sabrina and asked her for a pin. For a second, I saw her confidence slip. I do not think she saw that coming. Her father offered me his fancy Mont Blanc pin like he was proud to play a part in this performance. I walked over to their spotless white marble countertop, laid the paperwork out, and started signing line after line. I did not say a word. The only sounds were the pen scratching across the pages and someone clearing their throat in the background. When I was done, I looked right at Sabrina and told her this was, without a doubt, the best birthday gift I had ever received. Then I turned around and walked out. No yelling, no slamming doors, just silence. The confusion on their faces when I did not lose it? That alone almost made the whole thing worth it. I got in my car and started driving with no real plan, no destination. Eventually, I ended up at this rundown bar where nobody knew who I was. I ordered a glass of whiskey, then another. I sat there staring at my phone as messages from Sabrina started piling in. She asked why I had not said anything. She wanted to know if I really was not going to fight for us. She accused me of running away, saying I was just proving her point. After a few drinks, something inside me shifted. That dull, empty feeling started to turn into something sharper. Not wild anger, but a focused, calculated kind of rage. The kind that makes you want to tear someone's world apart piece by piece. Here's what she and her family never realized. 7 years of being married into that kind of household? You pick up a lot of information. You see things. You hear things. Like the family accountant who gets loose at parties and brags about bending the numbers. Or the cousin sneaking around with her own sister's husband. Or those so-called business trips her dad always took that had nothing to do with actual business. So that night, I did 3 things. First, I called my friend Derek. He is the most cutthroat divorce attorney I know, and thankfully, he owes me a favor. Second, I began combing through our shared cloud and grabbed screenshots of every shady message Sabrina had ever sent or received, anything I could still access. Third, I sat down and wrote a list of every friend, colleague, and business contact who deserved to hear the truth from me before she had a chance to spin her version. I did not return home that night. Instead, I crashed on a buddy's couch and woke up to a phone full of even more messages from Sabrina. Only now, her tone had shifted. The smugness was gone. She sounded anxious. Clearly, she thought I would be the one crawling back, begging to talk things out. By midday, Derek had already filed the counter paperwork. I quietly pulled my half of the funds from our shared accounts, left hers untouched. I am not reckless. While she was probably out at brunch with her family, still gloating, I rented a storage unit and moved everything important out of the apartment. Now it has been a full week. I am living out of an Airbnb for the time being, figuring out my next step. Sabrina has gone from smug to confused to flat-out panicked. She calls constantly now. Her last message said this was not how she expected things to turn out. Well, no surprise there, Sabrina. This definitely was not how any of it was meant to play out. Derek, my attorney, says I am in a far stronger position than she likely assumed. Thankfully, there are no children. Most of the big assets are under my name. And yes, there is plenty of proof she was unfaithful. Turns out, she had been seeing her coworker Jared for months. Makes that little jab about me being the disappointment feel extra ironic now. So right now, I am planning my next steps with precision. That anger? It is still there, but now it has direction. Her whole family spent years looking down on me. They treated me like I was worthless. Then threw a party to celebrate the end of my marriage. They have no clue what is coming. Has anyone else been publicly humiliated by a spouse like that? If so, how did you handle it? Because at this point, I am teetering between being the bigger person and going full scorched earth. And honestly, I am leaning toward the latter. 2 days later, I made a discovery that changed everything. I was going through our shared cloud storage, just trying to save some personal photos before Sabrina could erase them. That is when I noticed a folder labeled Work Presentation. What caught my eye was that it was created around the same time Sabrina started acting distant. Curious, and honestly suspicious, I opened it up. It was not a work presentation. What I found were hundreds of screenshots. Messages between Sabrina and Jared, stretching back at least 9 months. They were packed with pet names, plans to meet at hotels, and more emojis than I knew existed. If you are going to cheat, Maybe do not store the evidence on a shared cloud account. Just saying. There were even selfies of them together at places where Sabrina had told me she was working late. Turns out, those late-night, quarterly report meetings were just another excuse to be with Jared. And apparently, his abs had more to do with her schedule than any spreadsheets. I sent every bit of it to Derek. He replied with a simple message. Christmas came early. That guy is ruthless, and I am absolutely fine with that. So that was the first big discovery. Then, after the initial shock wore off, I made a decision. Actually, 3 decisions. First, I would focus on rebuilding my life, not just chasing revenge. Second, I would let Derek handle the legal battle and avoid direct contact with Sabrina. Third, I would quietly begin creating a new life that would eventually make her realize what she threw away. The apartment we had shared held too many memories, so I found a short-term rental instead. It was simple, but it had a little balcony where I could sit and actually see the stars again. The first night there, I cracked open a beer, looked up at the sky, and realized I had not felt that calm in years. I started going to the gym regularly, not just for the revenge body, though I will admit that part helped, but mostly to deal with all the bottled-up anger. At first, I could barely lift anything without shaking like a leaf. Now I am finally seeing some muscle take shape. Funny how emotions can show up in your arms. The divorce process has been interesting. Sabrina assumed she would walk away with half of everything. She claimed she had sacrificed her career for our marriage. Derek actually laughed when he heard that one. Turns out, those so-called sacrifices are tough to argue when most of your workday was spent exchanging romantic messages with your coworker. That pile of affair evidence, it became our secret weapon. Sabrina's family had always tried to project this image of perfection. Her dad, Warren, especially, he was always on social media preaching about family values and business integrity. Once we made it clear that the affair could become public knowledge, suddenly they were very open to our terms. There was one strange moment, though. I had gone back to the apartment to grab the last of my belongings. Sabrina showed up out of nowhere. It was the first time I had seen her since the birthday ambush. She looked different. Hair messy, no makeup, wearing sweatpants, totally unlike her usual polished self. She launched into some emotional speech about regrets, how Jared was not who she thought he was, and maybe we should talk about reconciliation. I said nothing. Just walked past her with a box of my stuff and told her to have her attorney reach out to mine if she had anything to say. The look on her face, like it had never even crossed her mind that I would reject her, was something I will never forget. Here is where things stand now. The divorce is almost complete. We are selling the apartment and splitting what we make from it. I let her keep most of the furniture, since I am starting from scratch anyway. I have reconnected with some old friends that Sabrina never liked, like my buddy Eli, the one she once insulted for bringing cheap wine to dinner. Turns out, Eli is still a solid friend, and now we hang out weekly for game nights. I also started a little side business, something Sabrina always mocked. I refurbish vintage furniture. Nothing big, just a hobby that brings me peace. Last week, I made my first sale on Etsy. After expenses, the profit was $28. But to me, it felt like $1 million. Now this is where things start to get interesting. Turns out, Sabrina's family business, luxury real estate development, has been running into some issues lately. They had this major commercial project lined up, but it lost its primary investor not too long ago. Funny enough, that happened right after I had lunch with an old college buddy. Plot twist, he works for that same investment firm. Did I bring up Sabrina's family or their business during lunch? Not at all. Did I accept his connection request on LinkedIn afterward? Absolutely. Last week, Sabrina's sister Chloe reached out to me. Honestly, she was the only one in that family who ever treated me with any real decency. She told me Sabrina had completely fallen apart. Jared dumped her after her father tried to pull strings and get him a cushy position at their company. Turns out, Jared was never interested in Sabrina for who she was, just for the access her last name could give him. Color me surprised. Sabrina's once constant stream of picture-perfect Instagram posts has gone completely quiet. Meanwhile, I have been sharing the occasional update, hiking trips, furniture builds, some low-key nights out with friends. Nothing flashy. Just me enjoying a simple, peaceful life. One of her best friends even liked one of my posts at 2 in the morning, then quickly unliked it. So yeah, they are definitely watching. Last night marked what would have been our wedding anniversary. I was sitting out on my balcony, scrolling through Twitter, feeling pretty okay, all things considered, when my phone lit up with a message from Sabrina. She said she figured I probably hated her, but she could not stop thinking about what might have been if she had not ruined everything. She said she missed my terrible jokes and how I always made coffee for both of us, even when we were fighting. She admitted the apartment felt empty now, that Jared was a mistake, that her family had been wrong, that she had been wrong, and that if nothing else, she just wanted to talk. She even said she was willing to beg if that is what it took. I stared at that message for a long time, typed out a bunch of replies, deleted them all. In the end, I just put my phone down and went to sleep. Before, a message like that would have meant everything to me. Now, I am not even sure how I feel. The anger has not disappeared, but it no longer controls me the way it used to. When I got up this morning, I saw 5 more texts from her, each one more desperate than the last. The final one read, "I am parked outside your building. Please come down." Sure enough, I looked out the window, and there was her white Audi, parked in the visitor lot. She was sitting inside, staring up at the building. I closed the blinds and made coffee. So now I am left wondering, what would you do? Part of me wants to hear her out, maybe just once. Another part knows that even opening that door a little could unravel everything I have worked so hard to rebuild. And there is still that small, petty voice deep down that wants her to feel exactly what I felt standing in that room on my birthday. Funny how life works. Before, I thought everything was falling apart. Now, I am starting to think that what comes next might actually be better than what I left behind. Now it has been 6 months since that unforgettable evening. A lot has changed. I moved out of that temporary rental and into a real home. Nothing over the top, just a 3-bedroom place in a good neighborhood, with a backyard big enough for a dog. More on that later. The divorce was finalized 2 months ago, and to my surprise, it ended without much drama. Once Derek presented the evidence of the affair, her family's lawyer folded faster than cheap patio furniture. The side hustle I started, restoring vintage furniture, has been doing all right. Not enough to quit my job, but it pays for coffee, streaming services, and the occasional takeout night. I even have repeat customers now. Some of them specifically ask for pieces in my style. Still feels strange, knowing that people enjoy the same design Sabrina once called junkyard rejects. Anyway, last Thursday night was pretty normal. Ordered a pizza and was halfway through that show everyone's been talking about on Netflix. Honestly, not that great, but I had already committed. Then around 11:30, I got a Ring doorbell alert. I figured it was just a neighbor stumbling home from a night out. But when I checked the camera, I saw Sabrina's car parked across the street. Headlights off. Just sitting there. At first, I thought maybe she had dropped someone off. But the car did not move. It stayed parked in the same spot for over an hour. So I did the reasonable thing. I ignored it, turned the TV back on, and tried to relax. But the idea of her just sitting there in the dark kept nagging at me. It was around 1 in the morning when I checked the camera again. Her car was still parked out front. That is when my phone started going off. Message after message. She was begging for 5 minutes of my time, said she had been trying to reach me for weeks, that she had made a huge mistake. And then the one that actually made me sit up. She said she had been living in her car for 2 days and had nowhere else to go. I walked to the window, and sure enough, there she was, reclined in the front seat of that same white Audi her father gave her for her 25th birthday. The one she once called entry-level, even though it cost more than half my yearly salary at the time. I stood there for a while, debating what to do. Part of me wanted to just close the blinds and let her sit out the night. Call it poetic justice. But I am not heartless. So I threw on sweats and a hoodie and stepped outside. When I tapped on her window, she jumped. The look on her face said everything. Her makeup was smudged, her hair looked like it had not been washed in days, and I recognized the same outfit she had worn in one of her last Instagram posts. She fumbled to unlock the door, nearly falling out in her rush to speak. The first thing that hit me was the smell, not sweat, but that stale, lived-in scent of fast food wrappers and desperation. Then I noticed how much weight she had lost. Sabrina had always been slender, but now she looked almost frail. She immediately launched into a flood of words, half sobbing, half talking, trying to explain everything at once. Took me a minute to piece it all together. Turns out Jared had not only been cheating on her, he was also passing sensitive information about her family's company to their competitors. Once her father found out, he fired Jared on the spot. Jared, in turn, dumped her and disappeared with a pile of confidential files. But it gets worse. Sabrina had been covering for him at work, tweaking reports, fixing numbers, all to make him look better. All because she thought she was in love. When everything unraveled, her dad finally snapped. He cut her off completely. No job, no allowance, no apartment. She had spent the past few weeks crashing with friends, but one by one, she had burned those bridges too. Her last roommate kicked her out for not paying rent, which is how she ended up sleeping in her car, parked outside my place, as a last resort. I asked why she had not gone to her parents' house. That is when she dropped the real shocker. Her father's company was now under investigation, thanks to Jared exposing years of shady financial practices. Their assets had been frozen. They had downsized significantly. It felt like karma had finally punched through the front door. I let her come inside, not because I was letting her back into my life, but because it was cold, and I could not in good conscience leave her out there all night. She stepped into my modest home and started crying again, this time over how nice the place looked. It was just simple furniture, a few plants I had managed to keep alive, and a clean space. But after 2 nights in a car, I guess it felt like luxury. We sat at the kitchen table while I made coffee. She poured her heart out, told me how her parents had pushed for the divorce, convinced her she could do better, and take half of what I owned while she was at it. The whole birthday ambush? That was their idea. She said she knew she had made a mistake almost immediately, but pride kept her from admitting it. Then she said something that caught me off guard. She told me she had expected me to fight for her. I let out a small laugh, not out of cruelty, but just from the absurdity of it all. She had handed me divorce papers in front of her entire family and expected me to beg her to reconsider? She explained that she had nowhere else to go. No income. No plan. She wanted to move back in. Try again. I let her finish. Then I thanked her. I told her I was grateful for the divorce, because it forced me to rebuild from the ground up, in a way that was finally mine, because it revealed who she really was, and because it set me free. I told her she could stay on the couch for one night, but in the morning, she needed to figure things out, and those plans would not involve me. The next morning, while we were eating toast and coffee, her phone rang. She answered on speaker without thinking. It was her father, but this time, his voice was not full of arrogance. It sounded desperate. He asked if I would be willing to meet with him to discuss some kind of mutual benefit. Apparently, he had heard I was doing well. I said no. Instead, I gave him the contact info of someone who might actually be able to help. Natalie. She works with struggling businesses, helping them rebuild their reputation. She and I have been talking lately. We are just friends, for now, but it is the most grounded, healthy connection I have had in years. Sabrina left about an hour later, backpack slung over her shoulder, headed to Chloe's place by Uber. Right before leaving, she asked me if I would ever forgive her. I told her I already had. Not for her. For me. Because holding on to that weight was exhausting. I had furniture to restore, and a dog to adopt. Speaking of which, say hello to Rocky. He is a 3-legged pit bull rescue. He drools on the couch, hides my socks, and acts like he owns the place. Bringing him home was the best decision I have made in a long time. So it's over with Sabrina. 6 months ago, her family popped champagne to celebrate the end of my marriage. Last week, she was sleeping in her car outside my house. Life moves fast. I have no idea what her future holds. I hope she figures things out. But for me, I am finally looking forward. Looking forward to traveling without chasing luxury. To building furniture without someone calling it junk. To living with a dog who sheds on everything and does not care about appearances. If this story hit home or kept you hooked, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more stories like this one.